Hello, everybody. Welcome to the lunch hour with Dingo and the baby.
Baby.
All right, baby. Today we're talking about a topic I know you'll like, sports.
I love sports.
All right. First topic, we're going to be talking about football. Do you think football in its entirety has brought the newer generation and the older generation closer together?
Well, honestly speaking, so football, we all know that's supposed to be a man's game, a true man, right? You're tackling people, hard hits. But I would actually argue that on the surface, it might look like they've brought them together because you know what they have in common. But I would honestly say if you go to a deeper level, they might have actually split them apart for these reasons. Okay, the old generation, we're talking 1980s, right? That was a tough era of football. You had people hitting harder than ever. You had the way physical play style. You had the Steelers being physical, and you had just all these teams being physical, hard nosed hitting. If you see any of those hits compared to today's, you'd think that was murder back then. They might get charged with manslaughter. Okay, they the game was so much played more physically than in the 1980s and compared to now. That was a hard-nosed game. They ran the ball. You won the game of the line of scrimmage. Every inch, you won by inches, okay? Now, if you look at today's game, you have a passing style game. Everyone wants to be that flashy quarterback who passes the ball a bunch. No look passes, running around the pocket for 10 seconds and throwing it up for a jump ball. That's not a true man's game if you look at the old people. Okay, they want to see a game dominated by time possession. Okay, they want to see one team dominate that time possession, own the ball 75% of the game. Okay, run the ball, pick up your third and shorts, and go get a first down and go score long, lasting drives, and then get 3 and out. Hard nosed football. That's what they want. Now, today's era, you don't see that. You see a passing game where people average more passing yards than they ever have before, 300 passing yards a game for some quarterbacks. Okay, quarterbacks only win MVPs, which has been true. I mean, if you look at it now, MVP this year was won by Aaron Rodgers. Last year it was won by Aaron Rodgers. Quarterbacks only win the MVP award, where if you look back in old history, running backs could actually win the award once in a while. Crazy, I know, compared to now. So I think it brings them apart because you might hear an old person say, "What? How is that a flag?" When someone gets hit, where a new person goes, "Yeah, that's obviously a flag." And then the old people start to say, "No, that's just soft. That's your generation being soft." And then the new generation will probably respond, "Hey, man, that's no, that they might get offended." And it just adds to more turmoil because I think neither side's wrong because the new era has gotten used to a soft style of football. Flashy, just throw the ball up. If you get hit at all, it's probably going to be a flag. You can't hit anyone now, especially the quarterback. If the quarterback gets touched, it's going to be a flag. Where now you had in the old era, the people grew up with, hey, if I get near the quarterback, I can body slam him, I can destroy him. He's gonna if he held on to the ball long enough for me to hit him, he's gonna feel that. Okay, and guess what? You want to run the ball on us? We're gonna go in there. We're gonna punch you. We're gonna lower our helmets, and we're gonna
Mhm.
make you feel it the next day.
Yeah,
Where
I think
now that doesn't happen.
I think something else you can add on to that is today now people though if comparative to back then, they could hit a lot harder too. Because back then you could see actual chubby football players playing in the big leagues, whereas now that's not chubby, that's pure muscle. And if you get hit by that, like you would have in the old days, it would cause way more damage because they're just stronger and heavier.
That's very true. I mean, back then people they didn't know much about dietitians. Their diets weren't too much. They had people, there's this one guy famously, he was on the Bengals, and his thing was he would go eat 2 hot dogs at halftime. Could you imagine if he did that in today's game? Oh my gosh, he would get destroyed by the media, his coaches, everyone. They're all about all these fancy protein shakes, all that nowadays. You got to make sure you have the right amount of proteins. Back then, they didn't care. So yeah, you probably saw people a lot more big bellies, and a lot more weight to throw into a guy. Sure, they might have
Hmm.
been fat, but they also had some bit of muscle built into that fat and just killed a kid. Where now it's all lean muscle.
Yeah. All right. I think we covered the separation value of football. Is there any connection value to it, or what's your opinion?
Well, I think it connects them on the base level. If you get a grandson and a grandpa to watch something together, and that's tough, because they're come from completely different eras. So sure, like I said, face value, you might get them to sit down and watch something together, which is valuable. Having them have that time where they'd be like, wow, I could actually watch something with my grandpa. That's very valuable. I will not say it's not, because it is very valuable. You are able to have them sit down each other, and maybe they'll talk from football. They'll talk about something else that happened in life. Maybe they'll open up to their grandpa because they built trust over football. So it does bring people together naturally because it's such an entertaining game. If
Hmm.
it's tough to not be entertained by football. So, I mean, I think it brings people together on that face value and might open up doorways and avenues to talk about something else that's going on in someone's life.
Okay, yeah, I would have to agree with you on that one. And yeah, I think it's a good point. All right, we're gonna leave the realm of football. Say goodbye.
No,
All right, don't say goodbye.
I will
Um,
never.
we're gonna say hello to the realm of hockey. So if you don't understand the base rules of hockey, um, you get a goal. Hockey is basically like ice football, just with ice ice football with soccer rules, kind of, but a lot more
Yeah,
aggressive. Would you say that?
I would say that in the base level, if you're allowed to hit people in hockey, I would dare say hockey is not became it's became the least soft sport there is. Because
All right.
sure, obviously we still care about concussions, but it's not as there's not been such a steep decline in softness. People are still allowed to hit people. I mean, you're allowed to actually fight people in hockey, which is really cool.
And not get
So I agree with that.
major suspensions from it.
Yeah, and you're
Um,
and I mean they are soccer goal. They are that soccer rules, the same premise. Get the object into the net, into the goal.
mhm. All right.
So I
How
agree with you.
has hockey? Let's first focus on this. How has hockey changed from how our grandparents watch it to how we watch it? Has it changed very much?
Well, I don't think at a face value the rules have changed very much, to be honest with you. Sure, there's been innovations and reworking of the game, but I think awareness and public awareness have been way more public broadcast about it. Because if you think about it, most half of the league in Canada, okay, it just is. That's just where it is because that's where hockey grows up in. So I feel like back in our grandparents' era, you didn't see a lot of it just because you didn't know where to find it. But now you're able to find it, you're able to watch it more, and you're able to get these new gateway of fans flooding into it. And I think it's changed maybe the amount of like money and maybe involved in it, and maybe from there, maybe different. I just think doorways. I don't think rules have specifically changed. I don't think there's been much alteration to that, but just the avenue of being able to get eyes on the sport, which is so valuable, has changed.
Okay, yeah. Do you think there is any connection or separations for people watching hockey?
I would actually say if people were able, our grandparents were able to actually find a hockey game on TV and grew it with it and compared it to someone who loves hockey now, I would say there is a connection. Where football, there might be a disconnect and it's deeper level. I feel like here, almost all level, there's still a connection because the rules haven't changed much. You're still able to body check someone. You're still able to, the rules haven't changed. There's icing hasn't changed over time much drastically, if at all. Okay, the
Hmm.
rules are still the same. And that's important. The style is still the same. Sure, maybe you're not allowed to do as much physicality, but the game is still physical in its nature. Okay. You still let the players play. The rules haven't changed much. It's still the integral bit of the game. Where football, you don't know what a catch is anymore. You don't know if you're allowed to touch anyone, but hockey, you still know what, icing is, you still know the rules and you still know that you're able to hit someone. So I think it brings people together to still watch it, and the rules have generally stayed near the same to where you're like one person can agree, a 6-year-old could agree that's icing, and a 10-year-old could agree that's icing. Where if you look now, a 6-year-old would say that's not a catch, and a 10-year-old would say that's a catch, or vice versa.
Okay, yeah, I thinking about it, yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Um, maybe some people feel different, but I think you nailed it on that one. Um, moving in, do you think newer generations now focusing on children and their parents, um, and like grandparents. How do you think they all correlate to the little league sports, like little league baseball, little league hockey, like just little league sports? How do you think the grandparents look at that? And do you think that there's bonding there?
Sure, I think there is bonding there, just simply because I feel like grandparents now kind of make a great. I know no most grandparents make a great effort to go to those type of little league things. Right, I'm sure I can't speak about the grandparents' experiences as a kid because I don't know if there was really little league around during that time. Because if you think about the climate of the world, but there might have been, but I'm not
I
sure. So I'll just speak
I
about
think
the impact that's had.
yeah, I think there was little league stuff, but it wasn't like official. It was kind of like you just
Yeah,
went to the park with your friends, or maybe had a little team, but it was just ran by like one of the kids' dad. But carry on.
I think so. Yeah, I'll just speak about the impact you can see now. Grandparents make a concerted effort to go to these little league events. I think that's big for the children to see because they're able to see their grandparents do care about them, and they're able to really feel a connection with them, even if it is just on the basis of, hey, you came and saw me play basketball. It shows that they care. And if you, that's the number one thing. If you see that someone cares for you, maybe that opens up a trust. You know that someone cares for you. The trust starts to build, and you start to talk about deeper things, and overall your relationship grows over time. So I feel like maybe you could say that's the kid's first experience with their grandparents where they start to really see just how much they care. But they're willing to come to their games consistently every time or almost every time and be there at the start of the game till the end. And you're able to see that they care. And then from there, the trust builds and everything goes beyond that.
hmm I would agree with that. Like I think there is a really good connection there with all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, is there anything else you want to add to the little leagues, or you want to move on?
Um, I think there may be a little more, or like you said, how maybe it was just a parent running them back in our grandparents when they were kids. Now today though, you have a bunch of agencies. You have NFL Play 60, and you have all these super official little league stuff. So I mean, this became much more globally accepted now. People really, accept it and put great funds into it. So I think that's a cool thing because you're starting to see better equipment, better everything for the kids. So I mean, that's important too.
Yeah, I think you're right on that one. Um, all right. We're gonna head into basketball. Let's
Oh
just
boy.
focus on the what some may say the prime of basketball was uh back in like when the cameras were all grainy and slam dunks were actually like highlighted in that grain reel. Like you always see them in movies, like they're just old grainy. Um, how
Yeah.
has how has that era of basketball changed from now era and the viewpoint on elders and newer generation looking at each era of basketball?
Okay. So I'll break it down into three eras for you basically. You'll have the 1960s, the grainy area, like you said, the
hmm
prime time. And you could also go or late 1980s, early 1990s, even into the late 90s. So from, let's say, late 1980s to late 1990s, that was the Michael Jordan era. I'll just put it down to that simple, the hard nosed, real basketball era. Okay. And then you have today's era, the soft era. Okay. If you look back at the 1960s, the old fashioned, that was the era of really minimal skill and just people pure dominating. Okay. If you look back, people could only dribble with their dominant hand. Okay. No one, if you were right handed, you did not have to dribble with your left hand. You did not. You just dribble with your right hand. You made simple passes. Nothing was flashy. Nothing was flashy in that era. You had these great men like Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell just dominating. If you had one of those guys, you were winning championships almost guaranteed. The teams were so much fewer. It was at that point a startup league. So you just needed one or two guys and you were just going to dominate. You had two main teams, the Lakers and the Celtics, who just dominated in that era because they had, guess what, Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell. So they just had their teams dominated. They had these big men who were both big men who at the time people were way shorter than they are now. Back then, that's just a fact. Look at it. People were way shorter back in the 1960s than they are now. So when you had these 7-footers, or even a 6'9" guy would be like 7'2" now. I mean, they just dominated. They dominated over and over. I mean, you had Wilt Chamberlain score 100 points in a game. That's crazy. So you just had pure dominance, I think, in that era. That's what you can call it, the dominance era, because they just had two teams going back and forth dominating. I wouldn't say it's the most physical era, which brings us into the 1980s, 1990s. Okay, that is the physical era, and what I would call the prime of basketball, because you had great star power. The NBA got out of its cocaine era. That happened around the 1970s. Cocaine was a big thing, crack, everything. That was the drug era. So now they were just getting out of it and coming into the prime basketball, where drugs starting to be willed out, and you had pure basketball. You also had aggression, pure aggression. People every time would drive into the lane and go pure aggressiveness. And there was fouls. It was physical. And that's, I think, what made people so happy, because you had around that time, 1980s, 1990s, that also what the NFL had, physical aggression. You had a man trying to assert its dominance over another man. I think that's why they're able to relate so much, is because you had hard-nosed two of the two most popular sports. Maybe baseball's up there, I don't know, but these two sports were just hard physical. You had fights, you had elbows, everything. And then you had really skilled players. You had Michael Jordan, who most would regard as the greatest basketball player of all time. High skill. But you also had many other skilled players. You had Hakeem Olajuwon. You had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in the early 1980s. Then you shifted over and had Dominique Wilkins, Clyde Drexler, a bunch of people. I won't get into them, but they were just skilled. They were skilled men, and they knew what they were doing. You had simple sets, which started to flare a little bit more, but you were a team still. And then you come into the sad era of now. Oh, what basketball has become. You now have people doing isolation ball, which is where you just go one-on-one over and over and over and over again. You dribble the ball, you shoot a step back three. If you miss it, guess what? What are they doing next possession, you think? The same thing. Same thing. They're going to dribble the ball, step back three. Guess what? If I miss 10 3-pointers in a row, I'm going to go shoot another one. I mean, it is just so soft. You have people like LeBron James, okay? If that guy gets touched, he acts like he's fairy dust. He is glass, okay? He gets touched. Oh, my gosh, he's a ballerina out there. Okay, and that's why he's not the greatest of all time, in my opinion, because he is not a good ambassador of what a man is, because simply he gets touched and he turns into a crybaby. That's just the truth of it. And he chased personal accolades way too much. And if you want to talk about the game itself, let's not even talk about the players. You had Michael Jordan, who was the head. Now you had LeBron as the head. Okay, but the game itself, you have no more team. You have star players requesting trades every single year because they lost one bad season. I mean, come on. What happened to the era where you would just, guess what? If you lost to a team, you beat them the next year. No, that doesn't happen anymore. Now, if you lose to that team, you know what you do, Tyson? You know what you do?
What?
You go ahead and join them. That's what you do. You join them. And that's not okay.
Taking that if you can't beat them, join them mentality.
Yep, that is exactly what you do. And it is sickening, because there's no competitive fire anymore. It is just embarrassing. I mean, I could never imagine doing that. That is just the lowest thing a guy can do. Oh, but I'm not good enough, so let me just go join them. Okay, like that's how people lose their legacies, because they're not good enough. It is just crazy, the amount of stuff that's happening. You don't see anyone passing the ball anymore. It's all flashy, between the legs, behind the back, crossovers. I mean, no, pass the ball and cut and go get a pin down screen and come back around and shoot it. No, if you ask 25 15-year-olds what that means, 10 of them will be like, oh, I don't know. I mean, that's the problem with today's game. It's just a political show where people just want to dribble, and shoot the ball and brick it. I mean, oh my gosh. If you ever watched a game, have you watched a game in the past year?
No.
You want to know why? Because it's a stupid game. No one wants to watch it, because no one wants to watch 140 points to 130, or in the 1980s, it was 90 to 80 at the end of the game. I mean, there's 100 more points being put up in total over 20 or over 40 years, 30 years. That's crazy. That is way too much. People only shoot 3-pointers now. There's no more back to the basket, hardcore physical mentalities. Nope. We're just soft now. It's the softest era in the history of the NBA.
No bruises or bloody noses.
No, nope, nope. Only in their egos because they get told they're soft, and then say, no, it's just the era we're in.
Yeah.
No, you guys make it stupid.
Well, I think we've covered really good on football, basketball, hockey, and even little leagues. So I think that's where we're going to end it today. Thank you so much for your input on all of these.
Thanks
I
for letting
can,
me talk.
yeah, I felt the passion in it. Um, yeah, and I thank you guys so much for watching. I mean, listening to this video, and we'll see you guys next time. Thank you so
Later,
much.
guys.
Peace out.